Okay, I won't read directly from this sheet because it says good afternoon everyone, and that will confuse the hell out of all of us. So good morning everyone, and welcome to the Culture and City Development Decision Meeting. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, the Cabinet Member for Culture and City Development. A couple of bits of housekeeping before we start. In the interest of safety, if the continuous fire alarm sounds, and this is particularly important today because we've got the Chief Executive of the Guildhall Trust with us, so we want to make sure we're doing things properly, please evacuate the room by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble in front of Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting, but only if you signed in, obviously. This meeting, like all decision meetings, is live streamed, and there's a camera at the back of the room in a fixed location, which will be recorded on the Council's website. Members of the public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. There are no deputations today that we know of, but there may be one or two questions. Finally, may I ask everyone to use the microphones provided when they are speaking, because otherwise the live stream doesn't pick you up. I'll now ask everyone present to introduce themselves, starting with...
Hello, I'm Councillor Claire Udy and I'm spokesperson for the Portsmouth Progressive Party Group.
Councillor Stephen Morgan, Labour Group Representative.
Linda Symes, Conservative Group Representative and Deputy Culture and Leisure.
David Evans, David Evans, City Development Culture.
David Percival, Library and Archives Service Manager.
Science Service Development Manager for Portsmouth Libraries and Archives. Chris Richards, Community Projects Officer here in support of Catherine, because I line manage her for the Waterfront Centre.
Catherine Berland, Waterfront Garden Centre Project Coordinator.
Sue Page, Finance Manager. Jo Dalling, Business Development Manager for Culture, Leisure and Regulatory Services.
Claire Looney, Partnership and Commissioning Manager. Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
Thank you everyone, and good morning. We have no apologies for absence that I'm aware of, is that right? No? Okay. Any declarations of interest, members?
None.
Excellent, thank you. In that case, we go straight to item 3 on the agenda this morning, which is pages 5 to 22 in the report, and that is the Guildhall Trust Capital Release. Jo, is that you presenting? Okay, over to you.
Yes, this is the Guildhall Trust Capital Release Report. It went to briefing and we're here today to seek authorisation to change the terms of the capital grant that's already in the capital programme for the Guildhall Trust. The original amount was 300,000, we have 285,000 remaining. And it's to present the business case here today really, to release 207,400 from the original capital amount for alternative expenditure listed in the report. In order to do that, we need to release the current terms of match funding that's in the capital programme in order that the capital amount is that's already approved for the trust can be invested in the capital items listed in the report. The report shows that there are 6 capital items and it goes into detail on 3 criteria really that's most important. Are they an absolute business need? Will they generate revenue or will they prevent revenue loss? As monitoring officer and the council and the finance team have looked at all these capital items. We have some documentation here around all of that, and we do feel that those criteria in these capital items are met. You know, the reason for this recommendation is that if the current obligation to the Guildhall Trust to secure this match funding is removed, it will enable them to make capital investments that will respond to their operational emerging priorities over the next 5 years to 2025 perhaps. The remaining 77,000 will remain in the capital programme for them to be used wisely as and when that amount is required. And certainly the monitoring of the 207,400 that will be released will be carefully monitored by myself and the finance team. I don't know, Councillor Pitt, if there's anything that you would like to add to that?
Thanks, Jo. The only thing I was going to add that the reason for making the alteration was that we are very much aware that the Portsmouth Cultural Trust, now renamed the Guildhall Trust, have made significant investments from their own income into the building over the last few years, but the exact terms of the way it was put into the capital budget didn't enable us to take that specifically into consideration, because it was about external match funding in the way that it had been interpreted. So in discussion with the Chief Finance Officer, it was decided that because of the investment the Guildhall Trust had themselves put in, that it was appropriate to release this money in order to further help them to grow their business. I think that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, that is correct. And also the reason why there is 285,000 is that 15,000 of that was released under the original 1 to 5 match. And in fact, the Guildhall brought in £90,000 against that 15k. But the cultural landscape has really changed since then, and the funding landscape has changed since then. And that's why we're suggesting that this release is made, to ensure that all those criteria are met and that the Guildhall Trust can continue to grow.
Thank you. Members, questions? Claire? No. Linda?
Yes, just a couple of things. I have no problem with this money being transferred. I think the fact that the studio is now moving on is a great thing. And I think that culture in this city is very important. It's the soul of the city, and we should seek to support it. However, I did notice that in the budget papers we have a 1.7 million loan, and that does concern me a bit, because as to today there are no significant reserves in place in the Guildhall. And I do worry about how it's paid back, because we all know if the loan is defaulted on, it will be the ratepayer of this city who will pick up the bill. So I do feel that the lack of interest by HLF and the Arts Council in actually giving any significant money to either this venue or the King's Theatre makes me really quite concerned about the level of borrowing. And is it just money we need to put into a venue? Is money the only answer to its problems? So,
yeah, I mean, obviously the capital papers have only just been released, so that people haven't had the opportunity to ask questions about what that actually represents yet. You'll be aware that at the moment there's £400,000 a year that's invested into this building for repairs and renewals. We, having had conversations with the property team, there is significant work that still needs to go on around the electrical rewiring of the building, and there is money in the pot to pay for that. There is also money left over in that's viewed as necessary towards air conditioning in the main auditorium at some point. But in discussions with the Trust, we've identified that and with the property team, we've identified that going forward, we may not need such a large sum. So the 1.7 in capital that's in the budget papers is a capitalisation of some of that revenue. So would not be down to the Trust to repay it. It's us being more strategic with the money and recognising that the best thing we can do is increase further revenue streams for the Guildhall by redeveloping the bar areas, and that will be done. That's just the starting point of a discussion. We've now got final version business plan and the case from the Guildhall Trust, and we're about to go into detailed discussions as to how we bring that forward. So apologies for the fact that that's a line in a paper, but that's a little bit of background behind it to explain that what we're not doing is loaning money to an organisation that, as you quite rightly point out, doesn't have significant reserves. We're being prudent with how we redirect some of the cash that's already allocated. Any further questions, members? No? Thank you very much. In that case, that is approved. Thank you very much, Joe. So, item 4 is the Hot Walls Studios business plan, which is back to you, Joe. Thank you for popping in, Andy.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, you've got me again. Actually, it's Kristen McQueen that should also be doing this report. She's the Hot Walls Development Manager, and she'll be along shortly, I think. But I was really pleased to pull this together, because it's not till you reflect on what you've done over the last couple of years that you really think, wow, we've achieved quite a lot. And this is a report, really. It's a second report that we brought over the past, this is the 4th year of operation of the Hot Walls, looking at the original Coastal Communities bid. Have we achieved the economic development achievements that we should have? You know, what are the other things that we've done? How we brought on the artists? How we've made those creative successes? So I've tried to put them as much as I can into the report, along with the architectural awards. And even very recently, we've received the People's Choice and the Solent Places Award, which does show that, yes, there's all these hard economic development objectives that have been achieved, but actually people really brought it to their hearts, really, and they really love the site. They love the interaction with it. But that's not to say that we can't do a lot more. We've done a number of events and programming achievements. We've looked at, we've done probably too widely the number of events, considering the staff that we have. We've focused a lot more now on the things that were successful and to try and broaden the audience, to get a broader reach down there. And the focus this year as well will be on the Round Tower, trying to develop that as an exhibition space more. The Round Tower wasn't part of the original Coastal Communities bid, but it is something that just fits so well. It's the final puzzle in that site. We need to get it a bit drier, we need to get the roof done, we need to get a number of things that we've put in for capital. And once that's done, that will just really lend itself to the rest of the sort of creative economy around that area. We'd like to do more collaboration. I think that's what it's all about. As we're a small team and we must collaborate. We do, but I'd like to do that a lot more. But one of the things that we've talked about in the report is the need to reflect and to think back. To think back about achievements, yes, but also future challenges, to make sure that we have a business model that is fit for purpose for the future, that rises to the challenges of its unique geography, the seaward side, the schedule management, the public space, the sandwich of residents, but also to make sure that we rise to its future financial challenges. The Coastal Communities bid, as it says at the end of the report, is dropping off in 2 years. And we need to really think about the business model for the future. When the original Hot Walls model was put forward, it was a long time ago, really, in terms of the economic landscape. We've got more studio spaces now, the economic climate has changed. And I think we really need to look at the model, the rental model, relook at the purpose of it, and just really, because it's been a success, to tweak what we've got and make sure that it's a future model that'll encourage success. So we would like to bring a new operational model to, if we can, to the next March portfolio we're working on at the moment. And that's why we have talked about a 6-year business plan. We're looking at the terms, we're looking at the square footage, we're looking at how to increase the rental, we're looking at how to widen our audience, we're looking at the facilities challenges. So although this report shows our achievements, which are many, I do think that the site does still have a number of challenges, and we need to be careful that we don't stand still and, laud our successes without really being realistic about the challenges, and making sure that we have a model when I bring it in March that is really robust to make sure that it secures it for the future.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe. And I know from the discussions that we've had that we are working to try to identify more spaces for people to grow into Hot Wall studio spaces and places for them to go to and to move on, because what we don't want to be doing is just ending tenancies and then not helping those businesses to continue to grow. So, members, questions?
Thank you for your verbal report, and it was good that you teased out some of the challenges that has been found down at the Hot Walls. Could you just say a bit more in terms of how you might see the operational model looking differently? Obviously, you mentioned there'd be a paper in March, but just say a bit more about what you're expecting. And secondly, I'm just conscious that we could probably do more to market it as a destination. So you mentioned in the report lots around social media coverage, which I think is excellent, but what could we do to market it as a destination for people that are coming into the city?
Okay, firstly, we're still working on the model, and to be honest with you, it is quite difficult to tick every box. What kind of site is it? Is it an incubation space? Is it a developing? What is developing? What is startup? There are so many questions. We would really like to have brought the plan to this meeting, but we weren't ready with it because we didn't feel we'd done enough benchmarking. But then when I looked against nationally, it's quite a unique site in terms of what it offers. It's a public space. We have to be very mindful of the residents who have been fantastic support from the original consultation. There was a lot of problems, and we've overcome all those, and they really are part of the site now, and we don't want to endanger that in any way with any new business model that we would change. I still feel in my heart of hearts that it is a startup could be anything from being in somebody's bedroom to 3 to 4 years in operation, really. And I think that site lends itself to what I would call a very strong startup, a startup that's already got its ideas together, who's already looking at maybe reducing their hours as a full-time person and moving into their art completely. So I think those things need to be teased out in the business model. I think you need to tease out and look at whether we have a startup rate and whether you have a developing rate or whether we have one rate. I think we need to look at the amount of times that we're open, and we need to think about the term itself. No other studio space has a term. So the very first thing to establish is, should we have a term, and why is that? So there are lots of, and the increase over 6 years, if it is 6 years, what will that be? The other thing is that we spend a lot of time at administration at the back. We need to change that. We have to change that. We haven't got the staff. We need to come into something that's very simple lease, that reduces the risk for the council, but also puts trust in the artists and reduces the back office work so that we can use that more for the business support for the site. Because it's well documented nationally that creatives need a lot more support than most businesses, and that's because they've got their head down. They are their art normally, they are creating themselves. So they actually need a lot more support, and that's something that I would really like to develop a lot. The tourism side, you can't tick every box with a site, I think. I think you've got to think about what is the key principle of that site and what are you doing about that. If you try and tick every box, I think you just dilute the offer and you twirl yourself into a knot. I think what we need to do is say, yes, we need to get the footfall down there. I'd like to work more with Tourism South East on their ideas, and we've got some plans to meet with them and our own visitor services manager. We've got a presence down there that we are just converting into a small office. There's a middle of the site is a sort of unused, very small site studio that is probably a quarter of the size of one of the studios, but we've converted that with the rest of the Coastal Communities Fund. We will have a presence down there. We hope to have a visitor information down there to get a feel for the site, on site, to see what we could do from the tourism perspective. So I think that's very much work in progress once we get the small office opened and the visitor information opened, which will be around in about another week. It's very close to being open. I hope you come down and see it. So my answer to you really is, it's complicated. I hope to bring my ideas as sounding boards to Councillor Pitt and to Stephen Bailey. I don't think there'll be any right answer, but I think we've just got to get out there, see how it works, and if the model doesn't work, then I'll be back asking for your agreement to change it and to see what it will. I don't think it should be set in stone. On the other hand, you have to have a balance for the artists and make sure that they are comfortable with what's going on, because their future, whatever we do, it's their future that's in our hands, so it's very important. So that rambling context, I hope, has helped you with your question.
Thanks, Jo. Is that all right, Councillor Morgan, and you follow up on that? Councillor Symes, please.
Yes, a few questions. Jo will know I asked these questions many times. The turnover down there concerns me quite, because I understand, from the concept, it was going to be somewhere where people who were developing a business could go and have a space at a reasonable price until their business emerged and they moved it on, and then they would move on to premises that would obviously cost them quite a lot more. There still seems to be some really successful people that are still inhabiting those spaces at the moment, and that therefore stops anyone that wants to use that space, who is just in that fledgling stage, to move up. I think it's a fantastic space. I think Joe's done and others have done a fantastic job down there. Everyone that sees it loves it. There was a lot of confusion at the beginning about why some studios were open and not, because people viewed them as shops when that actually wasn't the premise under which they were created. As for tourism, I think that you could create a trail from the dockyard along to include that. That might go down well in marketing, because do you want to spend a whole day, or even if you spend part of a day in the dockyard, then follow the trail and go back and spend some more time there? I think the problem is the way it's perceived, the way visitors perceive it, because if you're going to get tourists to go there and then they get there on a day when most of the studios are closed, it's a bit disappointing. Do they have to have set hours at which they open, or some hours of the day that they have to cover. I'm not sure if that's the answer. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for people, and I think that we must make sure that it doesn't stagnate, so that the same offer remains there for years and years and years. I think that's my only concern. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic place. Well done to all involved.
Thank you. Any more comments, members? The only thing I was going to add is that obviously Jo kind of referred to it in her report, but Linda chaired and I was a member of the discussion panel that went into shaping the offer in the first place, and there really were some sensitivities around that community which we had to work through in a lot of detail, but there was a lot of meetings, and the mood did change over time, didn't it? And it became very positive. They were the stakeholders in that group were involved in the name and what the branding would look like and the start, and it was a really good way of doing community engagement to make sure that that community bought into it. And no, because there was lots of concern that there would be a supermarket down there in the initial thing, which was the last thing we were looking to do. Coastal communities would have had a heart attack. But also know that the staff over the last year have engaged more with Friends of Old Portsmouth and the Spice Island Association, and they very much see themselves as all part of a community and a team now, which is really helpful. I do take on board Councillor Simon's concerns about turnover and needing to get new people through, and you and I have discussed that in depth. And it is about finding that balance between having some of the more successful people who are an attraction in themselves that people go down there to see, that then draw footfall to some of the smaller units. And as Jo said, there's some conundrums about this that we still need to work through. My priority is in identifying additional creative spaces to give us a bit more flexibility so that we're not just dependent on the hot walls and people can move in or move out, because if somebody thinks they're ready to go into the hot walls but it turns out they're not, we don't want them to be trapped there. Having a place to maybe retreat back to that's slightly smaller will be better. So we are actively in discussions about where we might be able to provide that at the moment, but I do take on board everything you said. Happy then, members? Thank you. In that case, recommendations accepted. Thank you very much, Jo. Which brings us on to item 5, and I'm assuming that's Dave Percival. Or is it Claire?
Is it the fines and charges?
Library fines and charges. Is that you, Claire, is it? Sorry. Over to you then.
Yeah, this report evaluates the impact so far of the removal of library overdue fines and reservation charges, and it makes recommendations to continue the pilot that we're currently in and have been since 2018 to March 2021, reassessing the impact again in October of this year and making recommendations for after the pilot period. It's fair to say that there's been some really positive feedback about the removal of both reservation fees and fines. Particularly anecdotally, we've received feedback from our staff in libraries that quite a few elderly people have said that they're really pleased that the free reservations have come into place because they're finding it difficult to travel to other libraries, so it gives them access to a much broader range of stock. We've also heard anecdotal feedback that people have been coming back into the library for the first time because of the removal of fines, as they've been previously worried about having fines on their library ticket. So that's really positive. We've also seen that more books have been returned in the period of the pilot due to the lack of fines, an increase of 12%. So that shows that it's having a positive effect. It's been difficult to assess more broadly the impact on book issues and membership. It's still too early days, really. So we'll be looking at that again in October of this year to analyse whether there's been an increase and what the impact has been. But we would like very much to continue with the pilot to see how it continues going. It's also really interesting to hear that there seems to be a growing movement nationally to remove library fines in libraries across the country.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Claire. You know, I'm supportive, and I think it's already demonstrating to be bearing fruit, and there were a few naysayers at the time worried that it would actually cause us to lose a significant number of books, but that hasn't happened, and we're actually getting more back, which is great. And I know anecdotally there's some really interesting stories about people coming in who've been holding books at home that they were, I can't afford the fines, and they've actually come back in with them and re-engaged with the library service, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So, members' questions? Morgan?
More of a comment. Thanks for this service, and I hope Hampshire County Council are watching this because of impending library closures. As someone who got fined as a child for not bringing back books, this is really lovely. And I've used your reservation service in the last year, and it was just absolutely awesome that I could reserve a book online, and then I actually got a phone call to tell me it was in, and I was just shocked at that, to be fair. I could just walk from the Civic down to the library to pick up a book, so carry on doing that because it's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, thank you for the vision that you've had on this. I think it shows that it's making a real difference, and I'm really pleased that nationally other local authorities are picking up on this agenda as well. I wondered, in terms of the scrutiny review around access to culture, if you're feeding into that review to make sure that lessons are being learned and we can apply them elsewhere.
That's something we definitely need to look at, yes, so we'll discuss that back in with the library team and with Stephen Bailey, yeah.
Councillor Symes.
Just a comment, really. I think it's a great thing that's happened there. You know, we were full of trepidation when we first discussed it, and we didn't know how it would work. It's been better than I ever expected, and bringing more people into libraries is something we've really got to aim for, because keeping our libraries open means sustaining them, and this is one way of doing that. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for your comments, members, and thank you very much, Claire. That's recommendations accepted. So, item 6, parks, seafront events, fees and charges. Claire Looney.
Councillor Pitt, thank you very much. The purpose of this paper is to give an overview and to seek approval for the small uplift in the annual charges for the whole range of things in regards to outdoor spaces and usage. This incorporates parks, land, use of land, seafront, various aspects, beach huts, and events charges for bits of land, and depending on what type of organisation you are, depends on the type of fee that we would charge. Overarching, we've consolidated it as we have in the last couple of years into one paper, just because a lot of those services have an interaction and there's a crossover between them all. For us, it's important that we also try to keep the fees and charges as low and accessible as possible. We are, however, obviously needing to ensure that we're covering aspects such as contribution towards the maintenance of spaces, maintenance of equipment, and the overarching running costs of those aspects. In the main, the majority of charges have only gone up by a CPI inflationary rate, which we are very pleased with. We know that elements such as the poster sites, due to very proactive working, are a very good income stream for the service and are slightly overachieving on their targets, which is really good news. Beach huts, as I'm sure you'll be appreciating in the recent weather, are an ongoing challenge, but we are looking at the beach huts on a regular basis with a scope of works to support those. And all these charges, also if it's for an individual, the usual reduction in charges if you are a leisure card holder apply. So we're really looking at how accessibility and how accessible they can be, and trying to ensure that fees and charges as such are not a barrier for activity. I'd be very happy to take any specific questions, but I hope the paper speaks for itself. Thank you.
Members' questions? No comments. Recommendations accepted then. Thank you very much for presenting, Claire. Item 7 on the agenda is the revenue grant proposals for the forthcoming year.
Councillor Pitt, thank you very much. This paper is a summary paper which we would traditionally have taken to the Culture and City Development Decision Meeting in December, but obviously because of the PERDA and the changes of the committee meetings, it's been deferred to now. The purpose of the paper is to outline what we were intending to offer to the revenue client organisations within the affordable budget. Clearly there's some links directly to the budget papers that are going to the February Council meeting, so it's slightly more condensed than it would normally be. We've outlined in the paper which those organisations are and the proposed allocation of funding. I can assure members that those organisations have a very detailed service level agreement sitting underneath them, and which areas we were considering recently how this would then fit in and reflect the service level agreement changes for the next financial year, to reflect both some of the work that's coming out of the Culture and Leisure Scrutiny Panel discussions ongoing at the moment, where we want to demonstrate how they're making access, how organisations are using the funding they're getting from us to help get people into and engaged with culture more. Sorry, my words are a bit muddled this morning. But actually, the other thing is also to make sure that they're adhering to the other elements, for example, within the impact assessment around climate emergency and what organisations are doing. So, for example, we'll be working with not necessarily these organisations, but if any of these organisations do outdoor events and activities, we'd expect them to use different types of cable ties, so they're not using plastic cable ties anymore and things like that. So some of those details are quite small, but what we're also looking at is the cumulative impact in terms of the number of people that are accessing and going to events and activities. We're also very conscious that this funding, some organisations it can be quite small, is leverage funding for achieving Arts Council funding as well. So 3 of the organisations we fund also get national portfolio organisation status with the Arts Council and therefore leverage in additional funds that way. I'd be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Claire. Members' questions? Councillor Morgan?
Helpful to see you mention obviously the SLAs that are in place to monitor delivery of those grants. Could you just say a bit more in terms of how officers make sure that targets are agreed and delivered?
A series of individual targets for each individual organisation are devised once we know the money is likely to be awarded. We work with then the organisations over a period of probably around a month to 6 weeks while we, I'll be honest today, they're probably a bit of a toing and froing, while we appreciate that each of these organisations are of their own individual organisations. They are not, and they have their own individual trusts and boards, so we, if necessary, go and discuss the detail of the SLAs with the boards of the trustees to ensure that they understand what the local authorities' priorities are and how we want the money that we are allocating to them to help meet those priorities. So there'll be targeted, so for example, this current financial year, one of the targets that the revenue clients have had to look at is how they are able to offer their services to looked after children. We get an annual summary at the end of every financial year, so this will be coming in at the end of March, which provides me with all the detail and the background information about those organisations, what they've done, how many numbers they've worked with, how many exhibition days, how many show days. So we have all the statistical information provided by those organisations, and also where we may have identified a target or a target area of audience that we want them to reach and capture. So another element we are currently doing is a piece of longitudinal research with the audience agency, looking at the demographic of the city and who might then, from that demographic, come and access activities in cultural venues, as opposed to the analysis of the databases of each of those individual organisations have. So within that, when we do the analysis with the audience agency, we might then ask some of those organisations to target specific sectors of the community where they are either underrepresented or we feel that the city has far more of them they're not engaging with effectively. So that I would say it's a very individual conversation that we have with each of those organisations in order to ensure that the local authorities' priorities are met, but also they're reflecting their own bias and types of support and type of working.
Further questions?
Just a comment, really. Again, I have no problem with the revenue grants. I do, however, have concerns about the £3.5 million that is going to be allocated to the Guildhall in the form, to the King's Theatre in the form of a grant and £3 million of borrowing. I am concerned because I feel that I know when I was at the King's Theatre, the worry was about secondary spend. I mean, even if they produced a wonderful amount of money from that secondary spend, even if the loan was over 50 years, it still means a repayment of £85,000 a year, which is quite a sum, and that's only half the money they actually need to carry out the works they want. Also, the fact that we paid £180,000 for a shop that they now plan to demolish. So, you know, I'm sure these questions will be raised or answered at the budget meeting, but I would like my concerns to be noted.
Fair enough, thank you very much. I think the only comment I'd make on that at this stage is that we entered a financial assessment phase with the King's Theatre in November 2018, and that there was financial due diligence for the whole of 2019 going backwards and forwards, and that the Chief Finance Officer is comfortable with the level of that loan. The loan is £3 million. There's £300,000 to settle a very long-standing dispute with the council over who was responsible for what repairs. Very unhelpful, and which in no way goes all the way to addressing that issue, but it goes a significant part of it. And then the other 350,000 is our match funding pledge, actually. So they've still got a way to go, and they're very aware of that, and they're putting together a fundraising plan now. and there'll be an opportunity for full details on that to be discussed in due course. It's not all the way there yet, it's about 90% of the way there, but as you know, if we didn't look at it in this capital round, it would have meant another year, and they've already been through a 15-month process. So it will obviously be contingent on all the due diligence being in place and giving members an opportunity to scrutinise that.
I think it's a shame that those three venues can't do ticketing and marketing and fundraising as a group, as opposed to all employing separate fundraisers, separate marketing people, separate ticketing arrangements, which must be very costly.
On a positive note, I know that at least 2 of them have had 2 meetings over the last month about ever closer working on some of those fronts in order to try and save money. So those conversations are happening. Members, anyone else? No? Okay, thank you very much, Sinclair. So recommendation agreed. Number 8, I'm assuming by the process of elimination that I'll get it right this time, and it is Dave Percival.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt. Last year, the Summer Reading Challenge celebrated its 20th anniversary, and I'm delighted to report to the committee that Portsmouth Library and Archive Service achieved our highest ever participation figures, with over 1,800 children reading 6 books over the summer holidays. And that figure is nearly a 7% increase on 2018, and it represents about 11% of all primary school children actually reading 6 books over the holidays, which is fantastic. We also piloted a new initiative, Summer Reading Challenge Plus, which is expressly aimed at targeting disadvantaged pupils. So we invited schools to express interest in taking part, and we had a small cohort who made 3 visits to libraries before the summer holidays with staff from the school, and effectively completed the challenge before the holidays. It meant they were able to be rewarded in assemblies with certificates and medals with their peers, and it meant that children who perhaps their parents might not have taken them to the library in the summer holidays were being engaged. So one of the recommendations is that we continue this initiative in 2020. The challenge has a huge impact on our library staff and volunteers. We had over 42 volunteers delivering nearly 500 hours of time over the holidays, with over 42,500 items being issued as well. You can see our libraries are really, really busy, and as the challenge gets bigger, it has obviously a financial impact on the Library and Archive Service as well. So the second recommendation is that we explore some additional funding to help support materials, book purchase and staffing as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you to you and the whole of the library team for all the effort you put into this. I think no one is in any doubt how high a priority this is for me. I think last year I set a challenge that we'd try and top 2,000, and we came very close, and I'm sure we'll do it next time around. Just to feed back to you, a conversation that I had with Joe Bennett yesterday about the role that the play service based around the adventure playgrounds could play in helping us. She's very up for that conversation, and to see if we can get some of these figures up significantly by working in partnership with the play service over the next summer period. So please do get in touch.
Yes, I'll be very welcome. I'll be in touch.
Members, questions? Councillor Udy.
Just a comment to say that I'm really looking forward to taking part this year with the kids. I met with David last week, going over some stuff about general stuff about the library and about some statistics that came out a few weeks ago. I think it's good for parents to do something with the reading challenge as well, because it kind of gives people a sense of structure over the school holidays, because time for a lot of parents, especially me, becomes like a construct over the summer holidays. I don't really know what day it is, and the kids doing my head in, and I used to just get out, and coming to the library is a really good idea to let off some steam, even though they kind of have to be kind of quiet, but they can still feel free to enjoy the library at a reasonable volume of their voices. Thank you, and I can't wait.
Excellent. Councillor Holmes, no? Brilliant. Councillor Morgan, anything else to add? No? Okay, thank you very much, members, and thank you, Dave, and keep up the good work for this year. Number 9, we're on the Waterfront Garden Centre.
Thank you. I'm here to represent the Waterfront Garden Centre. The recommendation is to update yourselves on the working of the garden centre, and to continue to seek approval to request referrals to the service from other services in the council to continue the sustainability of the project. Currently we're working with adults with learning disabilities and we also have been working with some individuals with some mental health concerns. I hope the report is self-explanatory about the garden centre's development and our progress, including the addition of a second site at Henderson Road, where we've been utilising the glass house and sensory gardens for those with profound and multiple disabilities. We hope to achieve better visibility for people in Portsmouth and also visitors to the city, and also obviously to continue sustainability with more referrals. I'm happy to take questions and I hope the report speaks for itself.
Thank you very much indeed, and it is a fantastic project that you have down there, and I'm really delighted to see that the report now much better reflects that work, something that Councillor Morgan and I drew out in the briefing session, because the report was quite bland and it's now much better filled out. So thank you very much indeed for that. Members, any questions? Councillor Morgan.
Only just to congratulate you on your excellent work, and I hope Fiona's listening that you'll do a good piece on this, because I think what they're doing down there is fantastic and we need to shout about it louder.
I concur. Councillor Symes, do you concur? Let's put a bit of pressure on the news.
Yes, I would like. I would like to reiterate what a wonderful job and how many people you've helped, as well as helping the community by providing plants for people on the seafront, where we used to have to go quite a long way to find them before. And I think you've done an absolutely wonderful job. Thank you.
Any other comments from anyone? No, I think we have a ringing endorsement to continue that, and please, I'm delighted there's now an active recommendation in there. Do continue those discussions of adult social care, and I'm sure if you were around at the end, the news might want to grab you for a few additional comments, if Fiona's not ignoring me. Thank you very much. The next item we have is, he says, looking through here to make sure he hasn't missed anything. No, that's fine. So it's item 10, seafront strategy. Is that you, David? No, it's Claire. Right, okay.
Councillor
Your
Pearce,
water
thank
safety.
you. This is just a short information item for members, just to let you know that we will, through the rest of 2020, probably into bit of 21, be looking to review the seafront strategy, which is now 10 years old. And as I'm sure you'll understand, the policy and strategic landscape for that work has changed considerably. We want to, as Josie said earlier, reflect on what we have achieved from the original strategy and look at where it will be going next, and obviously referencing some of the major impact work that things like the Coastal Defence Scheme will be having in terms of changes to physical landscape. But also we want to assess a bit more about how the event spaces are used, the numbers of people we've got coming in, which are considerable. But that's a piece of work that will be coming to you in the future, so we'd be very welcoming of any input you'd like to make into those. Thank you.
Absolutely. Members, any questions?
Just to say, paragraph 3.4 was terribly wishy-washy, and I wondered if you could just give us assurance today that, I mean, I believe the seafront is the jewel in our city's crown, so can you commit that there will be good quality public engagement around the future of the seafront?
Councillor Morgan, I can assure you there will be, but what I can't give is an exact time, because we're very conscious that there is still public consultation going on in regards to the coastal defence works and discussion about what those are physically going to look like in terms of the detail. We're also conscious that this strategic master plan, the seafront master plan, is a piece of work the planning is still leading on, so actually our piece of work can't happen until certainly the master plan is in place, because our strategy, which is about delivering elements that we are responsible for as a service, can't happen until that master plan's in place. But absolutely, definitely, engagement with the public is a really key part of what we will be doing, and there'll be a process which was followed very well in the origination of the 2010 one, and we'll be looking at that again, or a modification and updated version, because I'm sure there'll be much more social media action than there was in 2010 when we do it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And it's a good point, and I think it's fair to say that there was an awful lot of focus on getting the Sea Defence's planning application through because of the timetables involved in securing the government funding. But what I don't want to see is now 3 parallel bits of work that aren't talking to each other, because we need to make sure that what we actually deliver in terms of the sea defences is fit for purpose and world class, but then also all the enhancements that need to go with it and the strategies around how we make sure that it looks world class as a visitor attraction need to happen, alongside how that talks to the seafront master plan and updates with that STB and the SPD and the seafront strategy. So I don't want all those bits of work all happening in isolation to each other. So we're trying to set up a group at the moment to bring all that together, and they're working out how we can do a single consultation that ticks all those boxes and engages with the maximum number of people. So Claire couldn't really say that because that's not her part of ship, but it kind of ties it all together. So any other questions?
Not really. When I first saw this, I thought, oh God, not again. Yeah, I mean, how many times have we revisited this same thing? How many consultations have there been on it? How many times have people given their opinion without any outcome? I just hope that this reaches a conclusion rather than meanders on another 5 or 10 years, coming back to this meeting every few months.
I don't disagree. Okay, thank you for that, Claire. So water safety, that's got to be David. No, it's you still. Okay. Good grief. This is symptomatic for those watching online of the fact that the CNL team are more or less all sat here, with the exclusion of Adrian, Rosie and Doug. So everybody does bits of everyone else's job and swaps around. So water safety used to be David. I haven't gone mad, but it is now Claire reporting on this.
Councillor Pitt, thank you. This is just an information item reflecting on the fact that we have recently undertaken a further audit with internal audit on the whole topic of water safety and the local authority's overarching response to it. What they have found as one of the primary things from within the report, and the reason for this report as an information item, is that actually as a portfolio you take a disproportionate responsibility for that area, where actually there are a number of other portfolios that should be taking responsibility for it. Audit felt that the assumed responsibility by culture, leisure and regulatory services, partly because we are very conscious of the fact that we manage one of the busiest parts of the water edge of the city, means that other services are not necessarily being held to account in the way they should be for provision of water safety in other areas. It's also important to note that there is no national guidance or no national legislation around water safety. All we are aware of is that as soon as you put up a piece of public rescue equipment, you are responsible for it and maintaining it and managing it. So the purpose of the paper is really just to give you an update very briefly on that, and to say that we will be looking to set up an internal water safety group with representatives from other services to make sure that water safety is considered as a corporate whole, and that's really primarily come from the recommendation of the audit review. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And as you know, I detest silos, so I think that's an excellent idea. Members, any questions? No? Thank you very much then. So I guess by a process of elimination, over to David Evans, developing water sports in Portsmouth.
Thank you, Councillor Pitt, and my apologies, phone went off, I thought I'd turned it off. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the progress of developing water sports in Portsmouth. It's a strategy document that was first initially brought to this meeting in 2016 and was adopted. The background is we're an island, and as an island we have to consider water safety, but also the fact that we've got plenty of areas for people to get involved in activity. We don't just call it sport, because it could be various types of activities that are going on within the city. And whilst I agree with Councillor Morgan that the seafront is the jewel in our crown, we're also surrounded by water and have other areas where activities and sporting activities take place, particularly on the water. Some clubs this year, one club in particular is 100 years old, Portsmouth Sailing Club, and we're going to be working with them to provide activities, working with the Andrew Simpson Sailing Foundation, which, as everybody knows now, took over the facility of the Water Sports Centre in the Eastern Road, and has made a great success of it. I have to say, we terminated the Parkwood contract and went out to the market with this one, and there's no doubt that the Andrew Simpson Foundation have done a tremendous job now. We're reaching over 7,500 users, mostly from within the Portsmouth area. It also highlights water safety in the sense that there are quite a number of the youngsters can't swim, and that's something we're working with BH Live to, because we have free swimming to under 12s in the city, which is a fantastic way forward. But we're also looking at major events, and I'm sure that the America's Cup series will come to this at some stage in the future, but we know that we're going to be the host shortly. That's a very important part of what we're doing. The Tudor Sailing Club and the Locks Sailing Club are also all important parts of the delivery of sporting facilities on the water, as are many other smaller operations such as the Rowing Club, which is really great, and also the Kayaking Club. So they're all an important part of what we're trying to do, but it's a developing. The issue we've got is the joining them together. We do have a Portsmouth Sports Council where a number of them come together, but if I can give an example of the tennis provision in Portsmouth, all the tennis clubs, tennis areas meet on a 3-monthly basis with the Lawn Tennis Association, and that means that the city gets a very high profile with the LTA, and we now have more tennis provision than any other city in the country, bar none, per population. And we're trying to do this with water sports, with involvement from the RYA and other lead bodies in water sports. It's a bit difficult, it's a challenge, but we'll get there, and we'll start this year with meeting with the Tudor Sailing Club, the Locks Sailing Club, and the Portsmouth Sailing Club. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David, and I know that you are being persistent in your efforts to get the RYA to engage, and will continue to do so. Members, any questions? No? Okay, then that's approved. It's a noting report, so thank you very much. The final item we have then is item 13. Sue, are you presenting the quarterly monitoring?
This is the quarterly monitoring report based on the second quarter. It probably would have come to your last meeting, so it is slightly out of date now. But at the point in the revenue side, we were reporting a net overspend of 395. The variances of that thousand. The variances were explained in the report. The main item obviously was the planning development control. Now I can report that we're working on the quarter 3, and this position is substantially improved as the various mitigations have been introduced, and you will see a better position in quarter 3. And on the capital side, again, that's the position prior to the publication of the annual budget review that you've got for council, so it doesn't include any new starts.
Thank you, Sue. And obviously all that pressure that we had on the planning side of things because of nitrates is just a process that will now gradually solve itself, and I'm delighted to that is now working itself through. I was in a meeting yesterday where I was lobbied by people from other parts of Hampshire where planning is still completely stalled, and where people are now laying off members of staff and closing down projects, and I'm pleased that we've been able to avoid that while still taking environmental concerns seriously here in Portsmouth, albeit that it caused us a bit of a hold up for a while. Members, any questions? No? None? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes today's meeting. Just a final word from me. Thank you all very much for coming along to present today, and a massive thank you for all that you do to support the Directorate and the City. Thank you. Thank you, members.